I'm Helen.
I'm Miss Sinclair.
And I'm Edison. Y'all better grab your extra large popcorn. We are in the thick of things with great films.
I am open and positive.
I don't like it.
Let's throw on these boxing gloves.
Let's do it.
Let's fucking do it.
Welcome to Talk Movie to Me, a weekly podcast where we do a deep dive on a new release that's just hit theaters or streaming. I'm Helen.
I'm Miss Sinclair.
And I'm Edison, and this week's film is Past Lives, another one of our featured films that are big Academy Award contenders. It's nominated for Best Picture and Best Original Screenplay at this year's Oscars, and that's a pretty auspicious start for writer-director Celine Song, considering this is her feature film debut. Next week's episode won't be quite so highbrow, so make sure you tune in for that. Past Lives stars Greta Lee, Teo Yu, and John Magaro, and weaves a story of love and loss that spans over 2 decades. It follows the intertwined fates of Na Young, now known as Nora Moon, and Hae Sung. As kids, their first love was cut short when Nora's family abruptly immigrated from Seoul to Toronto. 12 years later, she's a writer in New York when Hae Sung finds her on social media, and through Skype calls across the world, the affection of their youth blossoms into a profound connection, only to be severed once again by the distance between them and the direction of their lives. Another 12 years passes, and now Nora is married to Arthur. Hae Sung decides to visit New York and reaches out to connect. The reunion brings to the surface a spark that refuses to be extinguished, despite the complexities of their current relationships and the weight of unresolved emotions. As we follow Nora and Hae Sung through the years, we witness the poignant dance of their lives, marked by missed opportunities, unspoken regrets, and the relentless pull of what might have been. This film asks the question, how can we reconcile the potential of our past lives with the reality of our present, and can we ever know the reverberating impact of the decisions we make today on the life of our future? First impression, Helen?
Yeah, so I watched this on Prime, and I was already primed to know that there would be ads.
I cannot.
Edison.
I lost my ever-loving shitting mind when that happened. What? Excuse me?
I am actually kind of glad that you experienced that first and told me, because I feel like if I had just, I would have been like, I would have been as mad as you were. But I was prepared for it. But so basically, if you watch this on Prime, there's 2 ads before the movie starts that you can't fast forward through, which is fine, whatever. But then there's an ad like 30 minutes into the movie, just plopped right in there.
It's actually deplorable. This is an unforgivable disaster and breach of like the movie-going experience. If they start doing this, I will immediately pull my subscription.
Well, because it's not it's a subscription. You're paying for the subscription. I know, like, if you have Roku or if you use Tubi, then there's ads because it's free. Like, anyone can watch it. So it's very strange that there's ads on subscription services that you're paying for.
But it's not even that. It's the fact that it came in the middle of the movie. Like, that's actually an assault.
It is. Give it to us at the beginning then. Sure, fine, irritating. But, like, you're just going to pull us out of the movie like that? What the
Infuriating.
Oh.
Anyway, so that was kind of my first impression
Oh, no.
of the movie. But I also was aware that this is a pretty affecting movie. Like Sinclair, I knew that it had made you cry, and I'd heard it from other people. So I was also a little bit nervous because I was just like, what am I getting myself into? But I loved how this movie opened. I'll maybe let you guys touch on that in your first impressions. But that was mine. Edison, what was your first impression?
Well, yeah, so you're right. This film does open in a really unique way. We see these 3 people sitting at a bar. They're our main actors. But the shot is actually from across the bar, and there's this voiceover of a man and a woman talking to one another. What do you think the relationship is to one another? He asks, and then they try and guess. The Asian girl and the Asian guy are a couple, and the white guy's their American friend, and now they're not even talking to the white guy, and whatever. And as it's happening, the shot like slowly zooms in on and focuses on Greta Lee's face, and her expression is definitely one of like complex emotions. Then she looks right at the camera, breaks the 4th wall, and then it cuts to a shot of Seoul and says 24 years earlier. And I loved this opening.
Yeah.
Because we do this shit all the time. Every
Totally.
time we're at a restaurant, out for drinks, we're like, what is their story?
Yeah.
Or working in restaurants for years. How many
Oh,
times do we,
yeah.
like, so it's just such a fun game and it's so relatable. And I also don't really know that I've seen this before, like opening a film. And I thought it was just so original and cool. A great way to start it. Yeah. What did you think, Sinclair?
It's funny that you said, this is something we do all the time. I think in the service industry, yes, but when I watched this, I honestly thought to myself, do we people watch anymore? I actually feel like we don't.
Oh, God, I do.
Well, I don't know. I feel like when you have the chance to people watch, you can look at your phone, or people are so in their own bubble of conversation a lot of the times. I think it's more rare now. I definitely think in the service industry, for sure, you think about the people that you're serving, but when you're out, are you paying attention as much to the other people around you? I feel like I don't people watch as much anymore.
Okay, well, when I get up
You
to
know?
Toronto in a couple of months, we will definitely go out and people watch.
Yeah.
We'll
I
do
like
actually
that.
do this exercise. That would be
Yeah.
fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really liked this opening as well because, we're kind of like the couple that's talking. We don't really, I mean, we have an idea because we've seen, the trailer for this and we know about the story. But really, we're looking at these characters for the first time and we actually don't know what's transpired up until this point. So we're kind of in the same boat as the couple that's trying to figure it out. Also, it's, two Korean characters and one white character. So it's interesting to hear what these two people are thinking their relationships are to each other and how those factors come into play. I really do love a story that ends where it starts and starts where it ends. I like a full circle. And, obviously we'll get into that. But I thought it was a really interesting way to start the film.
Yeah.
So why don't we jump right into storytelling?
Well, as you mentioned, this is Celine Song's first feature. I was not familiar with her prior to this movie.
No.
So I did a bit of a deep dive on her today, and she is so cool. This movie does seem to be quite autobiographical. She did immigrate to Canada when she was 12 from South Korea and grew up in Markham. And then she actually went to Queen's and studied psychology and then went to Columbia to get an MFA in playwriting.
Columbia in New York.
Sorry, Columbia University.
Yeah.
And she is married to a fellow writer. His name is Justin Kuritzkis. He actually wrote the screenplay for Challengers
Oh, cool.
and is writing the screenplay for Queer, the other Luca Guadagnino
Wow.
piece.
Wow. Okay, power couple.
I know, right? So she had a play called Endlings that opened at the New York Theater Workshop right before COVID hit. And I think it had like 2 performances and then it closed. And after that happened, some of the people a part of New York Theater Workshop gave out like essentially like grants to some artists to like create something during COVID that people could participate in, or they basically just told everyone to get creative and make something. And Celine, this is like, when I read this, I got so excited. She created The Seagull, a production of The Seagull, but on The Sims.
Oh,
The computer game The
interesting.
Sims. So she like orchestrated her Sims to like behave in a way that would follow the narrative of the play The Seagull, and then put it on Twitch and allowed people to like watch the play out on The Sims.
Okay, that's really cool.
Which I just thought was so
she's
cool.
super creative.
Yeah, very creative. And like those are kind of her most notable works. And then she wrote Past Lives. So I don't know, she just seems like a very, very cool creator. And especially, after watching this movie, I am so excited to see what else she makes because I really loved the perspective of this film.
Well, I did also, I saw an interview with her where she, to add to your bit about it being autobiographical, she did say explicitly about like she had a reunion with her childhood crush at the bar in the East Village with her husband. And she had this really interesting quote where she said, while sitting there translating between these two men, I actually felt like beyond translating between two languages and two cultures, I also was translating between two parts of my own self.
Right.
And I think that's a very clear creative genesis for this film.
Yeah. Well, this does kind of hop back and forth in time, but not in a way that's jarring or confusing at all. But it does start when they're children, when they're 12 years old, and they're living in Seoul and they're best friends. And it just kind of reminds you of your childhood friends. And I don't know if you had a childhood friend of the opposite sex, but I did. And it's just like a fun, innocent friendship. And I thought it was really authentic watching them as 12-year-olds, and I like their little competitiveness that's going on, because you're just discovering what you're good at. You're playing different sports, you're trying different subjects, and so there is this like male-female competitiveness that happens as you're figuring yourself out. And it's upsetting when they have to leave each other. I don't know if you ever had a friend have to move away, but it is really traumatizing as a child. And there's a beautiful shot in this film where they're saying goodbye, and they actually do go two separate paths.
Yeah.
There is this
I love that.
division, and they're literally and metaphorically going their separate ways, and she kind of goes up the stairs and he goes down the alleyway, and it's just like really, really beautifully shot, and a great way to lead us into them as young adults.
Well, and I also just thought that whole kind of so much of that chunk of time when they were 12 years old was fascinating. Having just learning a little bit more about the difference in sort of cultures, and like I lived in Korea for a year, but I taught English there, and it was nice to just see Korea in that way. But the idea that the mothers would like get together to take their 12-year-olds out on like a play date, like that was like kind of intentionally kind of romantic. Was just really interesting. But also it just made me think like the stories of their entire lives were decided then with the mother's permission to take them out on that date that day, and sort of almost formally acknowledge what they may have known, what could be. And the mother saying, we're leaving, but I wanted her to leave with good memories. And it's like, but what about what Hae-sung is being left with?
And also the process of them having to move, and the scene of them changing their name and having to decide what their English name is going to be. And it's interesting too, because as a child, like, I don't think kids fully even understand. They're like, oh, I get to pick another name, but they don't necessarily understand that it is a loss of their cultural identity. They're not realizing it in that moment, and it's an experience that I've never had to go through. So watching it, you're like, wow, that's really wild. That that they're picking a different name, and it just feels like such a loss of your self and your identity.
Well, I think something that this film did really, really well is it kind of, there's this theme of the story of being an immigrant and moving to a different country, especially as a young person when you're still in these like pivotal early years of forming your identity and developing interests and hobbies and ideologies and growing as humans, and how even though you may feel this like huge pull and nostalgia and connection to your home where you came from, now you're a person of two worlds though, and you can never really go back and bridge that divide. It's that saying, like we always say, that you can go back home, but you can never like return, And there's that one bit when in the film when Nora is talking to Arthur, and this is after Hae-sung has come to New York, and she says, he's just so Korean. When I'm with him, I feel so not Korean, and yet also so Korean.
Right.
And I just thought that was so interesting.
Yeah. Well, the mom even says too, like when they're about to move, she says like when you lose something, you also gain something. So it isn't just a film about loss. It's just it's about change and your life running a different course than you expected it to.
Yeah, and how to like comprehend those changes. I thought that this movie, I loved the examination just of, you know, how we perceive ourselves with other people, and the respect that it gave to relationships. Like I felt like this story actually transcended romance. Like I have been seeing reviews that are like a romance film, and I'm like, it's not though. It's bigger than that. It's about like the connections that you make with people in your life, romantic or otherwise, that are meaningful to you, and how you carry that with you and how that informs the person that you are for the rest of your life. Like this movie was so beautiful.
Oh, I agree. It's so true. It's like and also not only does it inform, like they all provide little pieces, but they're still with you. And so as you go through your life, you know, we're the same person in any given moment, but you must know yourselves and have had experiences where you suddenly find yourself back in your high school or around people who you were friends with years ago, even if they were the closest person in the world to at that point. And it like unlocks this person or this element of like who you used to be, right? And sometimes that can be really powerful, and it stir this affectionate connection like we see in this film. But sometimes it can be triggering in a negative way or whatever, right? But this film is speaking to that, like the way that we contain multitudes and all impacted by those around us, and how it just continues we carry all of that with us.
Yeah, this is definitely like real world romance. Yeah. And the thing I appreciated about this movie so much is like, you could call it a romantic movie, but the thing that is making this film feel different is that it's showing that love can be logical. And this is like a logical love story in a lot of ways, because movies have like made people get very swept up into the idea of love and the passion of love and the love story, running into somebody's arms, the kiss, we forget that love can be logical. And that you can be level-headed about love. You know, you can still make good decisions when you're in love. Nora has something very good with Arthur, even though she does have this connection with Hae Sung. But the idea of Hae Sung, it might not live up to what she needs in her life now at this time.
Yeah. It almost certainly wouldn't.
Yeah.
And I love that the film challenges that, because it's such a weird feeling, because you watch this film and there's a part of you that can't help but root for her and Hae Sung to get together, even though you also are like, no, that's actually not the right call. And it's such a fascinating adult examination of this.
And I really loved that about this movie. And, you know, there's that moment where Arthur, there's sort of that meta conversation where he says, like, I can't compete with this story. Your childhood loves, like, I should be the villain in this story. And I love that the movie, like, examined it that way, because that's what you're thinking, right? A conventional romantic film would be how it plays out. And I love that that's not the way that it went, because that isn't real. That isn't realistic. Maybe sometimes that's how it goes, but often than not, you stay in the situation that you're in and you just reflect, right? You reflect on the what ifs or whatever, but you stay.
Because what if there's no villain? Sometimes people are with good people, and if they weren't with that good person, they could be with another good person. You know, and it could work, or it couldn't. I think, you know, you want Arthur to be a villain. Like Hae Sung has that really good line where he says, I didn't know it would hurt me so much to like you. I didn't know that you being a great guy would hurt so much. You know, we want to like vilify that other person.
But he's so attuned to her, like even in that same scene too, when they're in bed and he says like, he's telling her how she dreams in Korean, and she's like, I didn't even know I did that. You didn't tell me that. They've been together for however many years now. And he says, there's this whole, it's like, it reminds me that there's this whole place inside of you where I can't go. And again, that kind of speaks to what we were saying earlier about how, you know, we're made up of a composite of all of the different people that we've known and experiences, but also everybody else knows us in a different way too.
Yeah.
The way that Hae Sung knows Nora is like this foundational way that's totally different than the way that Arthur does, and they'll never know her in the same way. And it's fascinating.
And no one will ever know you the way you know you as well. Like Arthur doesn't know her Korean upbringing side, and Hae Sung doesn't know her current life, and she's the only one that knows it all, right?
Yeah. And I think that we do get caught up in the possibilities in life. I really liked the existential elements of this film, the concept of inyan. So she goes over this in the film, but just to touch on that again so it feels fresh and we can discuss it. Basically, it's a Korean Buddhist concept, and it's the connection, fate, or destiny of two people. And it is also connected with the idea of reincarnation. And it's this idea of being connected in past lives and also future lives. So if you are walking down the street and your clothes brush somebody as you're walking by, then there was probably a connection between the two of you in a past life. And I actually thought of this the other day because I was walking down Queen Street and I tripped and I almost fell, and I grabbed this guy next to me. Like I grabbed him to stay upright.
Right.
And then I just like didn't look, and I like quickly walked away. And I was just like, oh my God, was it Indian? Like, sorry, guy that I accosted in the street. I apologize. But then I was like, oh, maybe I was married to him in a past life. I don't know.
I love that.
Either way, I didn't even look. I just kept walking.
You didn't say anything?
I kind of said sorry and like scrambled away because I was so embarrassed.
Aw.
But yeah, it is this idea that, you know, in one life, maybe we were married to somebody and maybe it aligned in that way. But then in a next life, the timing doesn't work out. And we're married to somebody else, but they're still in our life.
Well,
somehow.
it's like it's
you know?
the sliding doors of it all, right?
Yeah.
It's like how you just take one little turn and everything could have been totally different. And there is always a pain in the what if, but you just don't know. You can't deal with that because you are right now.
But
And
I
that's
feel
what
like
she
what
says.
was right in one life, it might not be the right choice in the next life, right?
Totally.
But I feel like the concept of inyan almost makes the what if palatable or something, because you're like, all right, we're not together now, but like maybe we were, maybe we will be, and like it doesn't mean that I'm missing out or you're missing out. It just means that it's not
This
right
isn't
now.
our time.
And that's kind of where they get to at the end.
Yeah.
And that is actually such a romantic idea, but it's being presented to us in a story that's so grounded in the life that's being lived in this moment, in this time, right? And I think that that's what makes this movie so devastating. Like we were talking about, is this movie devastating? Well, no, not really, but it is in a bittersweet way. It's not devastating in a tragic way, or the way that we think devastation is going to be presented to us on screen. It's because this rings so true to real life, and we are affected by things like time and career and geography and circumstances, and that's what's bittersweet. Yeah, it's like we can't possibly live every possibility in one life before we die, and I think that's what really affects you when you watch this film.
Nail on the head. 100%. That is the bit that's the most devastating. I think it's the most universal, at least for me when I was watching it. I remember when I was younger, my like, it's why I wanted to be an actor originally, was because I just want it to live all of the different lives. And I was like,
yeah.
if you're an actor, then you can at least kind of live all the different lives.
Yeah.
But like that, we only have the one, and we're only on one path at any one time. And that it is a really devastating in some ways kind of thing to come to terms with, truly. And this film had such respect for its audience, like to just open up all of these questions for us. And it was a very intimately like relatable film.
Yeah.
But and also just so much respect to adult relationships trying to navigate all of these things. You know, like this is like you're watching an adult relationship, like two people that love each other and that have married each other and have committed to each other and are dealing with these, you know, with past things, with doors that have not been closed. Like these are things that couples kind of have to go through. Maybe not this exact situation, but you why are you laughing?
Because I'm just thinking how we should have done a double feature with this and Anyone But You.
Oh my God,
no. Nora comes home and says to Arthur, you were right. Like, he did come here for me.
Yeah.
There's moments where he's saying, do you find him attractive? And she says, yeah, he is attractive. Are you attracted to him? I don't know. Like, she's being completely honest this whole time. It's the most adult conversation ever on screen.
And I love too how Arthur is, you can tell that he's jealous and a bit afraid, but he's also accepting that this is just what happens in life.
Yeah. Like, what is he going to do?
Yeah. And he says, he's like, I'm not going to tell you can't go see your friend that you haven't seen in so long.
It's like you either are going to honor your marriage and our relationship or you're not. Like, what's he going to do about it?
Yeah.
But it takes so much emotional intelligence and resilience to say, okay, this has happened. Now, the only way through is through. But I love how he was so openly vulnerable, like in the most pointed way when he said to her, like, you make my world so much bigger, and I'm wondering if I do the same for you. That's such a gut punch of a question.
Yeah.
I don't know if she could answer it. She said, you do. I love you. I chose you. But does he? I don't know. But it maybe it doesn't matter to her.
I don't think it matters. I think that it's like feelings and questions that we have. And I think the most important thing is being able to have the conversation and be open and honest and be in a partnership where you feel safe to do that. And I love that this movie showed us that. Because you know, most of the time it's like something that's very dramatic or tumultuous, right? Which can be entertaining. But this, like you said, Sinclair, this is just like a really adult relationship. Multiple relationships.
We've actually all, I've noticed so far in this discussion, referenced direct quotes from the film way more than we do typically and have done in other discussions. They're super memorable. They're really memorable, and it's really, really well written. But I also thought that something that was noticeable about this film was how much goes unsaid. Actually. And even them as kids walking together when their paths diverge, like there's like a full 45 seconds or a minute shot of them walking down. They don't say a word to each other, and they may not even as they start to go their way. And finally, it's like, hey, bye. And then obviously the final scene, like when she goes to say goodbye to him while he's waiting for his Uber, and they just stand facing each other.
And you're
no
like,
words
are
are necessary. That was so fucking powerful.
And it's not even a close up. Like, it's a wide shot. And so much of this movie is shot in wide.
Because it's always showing the space between them. Like, there's a lot of shots where it just shows the space between them. Like, even when they're sitting side by side in front of the carousel, when they walk up to each other, when they meet each other for the first time, you know, when they're on Skype, there's always something that is, there's a space in the middle of them. Always.
And yet they're inexorably drawn to one another. There's a force that
but you see the closeness too at the same time, like a lot of the time in the unspoken looks that they
first
give
movie.
each other. I know.
It's actually incredible. Why don't we get into performances? I feel like we kind of already are. But all three of these leads, like the fact that we're able to decipher what we are deciphering from their behavior when there isn't any words. That's a testament to the acting and to the direction, obviously, and the material. When Hae-sung is standing waiting for her to see her for the first time, like, I could have just bawled my eyes out. Like, he looked like a little boy.
I know. It was so brilliant. He literally looked like a little boy again.
Because he never closed that chapter of his life.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that when you see someone from your childhood, it brings you back to the person you were from when you were with them. You know? It's like you never fully change from that. It brings you right back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's our lead. She's the one who we're really seeing it all through.
Yeah.
Right? And she is remarkable in this, Greta Lee.
Yeah.
I mean, love her on the morning show. She's a totally different character. She's
gosh.
hilarious
This
on
is
that.
such a better role for her than the morning
This is
show.
so much of a better role. This is yeah, and Teo Yu, who plays Hae-sung, like, he had a challenging line to walk in this film, as because you want to portray that character as a real person, but you want him to, he's got to be vulnerable and awkward, but also charming and like charismatic and sexy and fish out of water
too,
and not overbearing, and not like, it's a lot of different qualities to kind of blend together. I thought
because he's like gone
really
to her home court.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, he's trying to
And he
make
doesn't
moves
really
in
speak
like
English.
her home court. You know,
I was watching an interview with him where he spoke about observing the actor who played him as a child, and how that actor held his elbows really close to his body. And so he decided to do that as the adult version of Hae-sung, and was kind of walking just with his arms really close in. And like, all of that behavior, it does portray this, you know, that is part of why we see him as a kid, right? Like, it's all coming through in those mannerisms. And it's just, the performances in this movie are really beautiful.
Yeah. John Magaro, really great.
First
as
Cow.
Arthur.
Remember him in First Cow?
First Cow. We chatted about First
Yeah.
Cow. He's kind of an indie darling.
Yeah.
Like, he works a lot with Kelly Reichardt. He's in Showing Up as well too. He has a smaller part, but he makes an impact. Even with a small part, he makes an impact. He is a very interesting actor. For him to have to sit through that restaurant scene where she's trying to include him in the conversation and then doesn't anymore, and it's just the two of them, and he doesn't know what's being said, and he has to sit there without saying anything, feeling like she could leave me after this dinner, like this could be it, and I can't interject because I don't know what they're saying, you know. I can't be a part of this. Like, it's such a heartbreaking scene, and he's kind of just waiting to see how this plays out.
And but he's not angry,
He's
you know.
not
and
angry.
something that I loved, the masculinity that's shown in this movie is so beautiful. It's not toxic masculinity. No one, they're not trying to be macho. They're not trying to be alpha. Like, they respect each other.
And her.
And her, yeah. And I saw an interview with him as well where he was saying that he wanted to leave during that scene. Like, he kept saying to Celine, like, I feel like he should get up and go to the bathroom. And she's like, no, you are sitting through this entire thing. You're sitting in that awkwardness. And it's so effective.
Yeah,
I love that. Oh, see, again, her direction, just so cool. And even just other random choices, like when, you know, the first time that we see her in New York in bed or with him, and he's like kind of sprawled across her.
Yeah.
His leg is all up on her in like a weird clingy, like
Like a kid almost.
like a kid almost way. And I was just like, that's a really unique choice for it was kind of an inversion in some ways of like the gender norm that we would expect.
Right.
She was the one laying there being like, get off me.
Yeah.
yeah.
You could see it on her face or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Well, and you
But-
think too, like, oh, okay, like, why wouldn't he get mad, or why wouldn't he get up and leave? And it's like, because he knows that she needs to close this door too. There is the possibility that she closes this door after this
right.
dinner, and that's gonna be that. And that's what ends up happening. She like cries in his arms at the end, and like he just allows her to figure that out.
And
you know, to
that
move
he's there
forward
for her for that too. Like, that was just, that was so beautiful. And the fact that he's like, he comes down, he's waiting on the stoop for her.
Yeah.
Like he knows that.
But it's not just about love either. It's about she
Yeah.
has to close this door on feeling disconnected from her culture too. Like that's what she's reconciling with, like the two different worlds of that. It's not just about, you know, who she's in love with, who she ends up with. That's not the main goal of this film. It's really about her closing the, kind of finding that balance between these two things that she hasn't been able to do. Oh, the saddest line in this film, the line that really got me was when Hae Sung says to
Both
her,
crying.
I know.
Helen's crying. When
man.
Hae Sung says, I liked you for who you are and who you are as a person who leaves, but for him, you're the person who stays. It's just such a good line. Yeah, wonderful performances from all.
Yeah.
What about technical? What stood out for you in that capacity?
Well, this was shot on 35 millimeter, and it looks so beautiful. Like the shots of New York City are so gorgeous in this. And the actors in that interview that I watched mentioned how, because it was on film and, you know, you don't have the luxury of take after take, everyone was just really focused and committed to what they were doing. They weren't wasting time. But the scene in the restaurant actually they did a full 2 days of just that scene, or in the bar, I should say.
Yeah, there's a lot to that.
Yeah.
I thought the Skype stuff was really good. You know,
Me too.
when you watch movies or television and someone's on Skype or they're on their phone and it's like,
it doesn't look real.
that doesn't look like you're even talking to anybody.
Yeah.
It just looks so fake. The Skype scenes in this were so good, especially the one where they see each other for the first time.
Yeah.
Since they were kids, like you really feel that, and like the way
really
it's
feel that.
shot, you really feel like you're watching two people that are meeting again for the first time on Skype. Like it is, it's very authentic feeling. It doesn't look like one of them wasn't there and they just did the shots of the one actor, and it's done really well.
Yeah, like even the moment of it buffering before he appears
Yeah, it
on
has
the
the
screen.
technical difficulties of it too.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're nervous. Like I was
Yeah.
nervous for them to see each other.
Yeah, and I think that the actors kept a certain distance from each other. So Arthur and Hae Sung, they weren't allowed to meet each other until the day they shot.
That's
So
wild.
there were a lot of really good directing choices.
Yeah, and with Nora and Hae Sung, Celine instructed them just not to touch each other.
Yeah,
She never
yeah,
wanted them to touch.
Yeah.
And like and she commented on how like in Korean culture, like in the States, it's everyone's, or Western, I suppose, everybody's, you know, huggy, touchy feely, and it's not like that in Korea.
Yeah.
Like
You
touching
see
is
the
very
reservation
meaningful.
too between the two
Yeah.
of them, definitely.
And see, that's why she gave us that one quick little shot of them on the subway with both of their hands on the subway railing, but not quite touching.
Yeah.
But you just feel this electricity between them. Just such an achievement. Okay, what's the last word on Past Lives?
We'll wrap it up.
Sinclair.
Yeah, I loved this. It's a solid 5 out of 5 for me.
Same.
Really
Same.
good. This is just one of the most solid movies of the year. It's just a solid movie. It's so good. It's such a good watch. Great storytelling, and I'm glad it's got these Oscar nominations because it's an incredible film.
Yeah.
Helen?
Yeah, I think this is one of like the sweetest presentations of the human experience that I've ever seen in a movie. And I didn't mention it, so I'll say it now. There is a reference to Eternal Sunshine in this movie, which is my favorite movie. And, you know, I know that's in there for a reason because there's some similar themes. So I really appreciated that. I loved this movie so much. It's really special.
I agree. It is a special movie. I knew that I would like it going into it because I knew that it was getting so many good reviews and whatnot. But I had no idea that it would move me so profoundly.
Yeah.
It also was not the story that I was expecting. It was so much more complex and relatable, and it was just special. Yeah, this was Easily one of my favorite films of the year.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that it's getting all this acclaim. It's very accessible. It's on Amazon Prime.
You gotta
And-
skip
As
through
long
some
as you
ads,
don't
but-
mind the
Yeah.
ads.
Yeah.
But if you haven't watched it yet, I don't know why you'd listen to this podcast, but if you haven't, then
Yeah, it's pretty much
you should
spoiled
now.
for you at this point.
Yeah.
It's your own fault.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Talk Movie to Me. If you'd like to get in touch with us, our email is talkmovietome@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at talkmovietome. Rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And season 7 episodes are on YouTube at Talk Movie to Me Podcast. I'm Helen.
I'm Miss Sinclair.
And I'm Edison. Thanks.